Hi, I'm Roxanna. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Roxanna.
Ooh, I am so nervous. My heart is just beating. What a privilege it is to be asked to stand up here and share my story with this wonderful group of Alcoholics Anonymous. Boy, I never saw myself as being a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I see that on our board we have 8 people that are celebrating tonight, from 1 year to 38 years. Man, 38 years is a lifetime. And that is so amazing to me, how this can be a permanent solution to my problem. My sobriety date is January 10th, 2021. This is my home group. We meet, when we meet Mondays and Thursdays. I'm supposed to come up here and tell you what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. What I was like. I was born to a wonderful, loving family in 1976. I was the second to youngest out of 6 children. I think I used to say I came out just evil, like running with the devil. That was my song. But I came out just not feeling a part of, and always wanting more, and always needing more. And that more was attention. I needed all your attention, whether it was negative or positive. And I searched for it, and I seeked for it. And what I didn't know is that I just never felt a part of, no matter where I went. Even in my large family, I guess you had to fight for attention. I had to fight for mom's attention, dad's attention. They were busy. They were busy people, raising up all of us children, working hard, trying to give us everything that they could. My friends, at a very young age, I can remember making my friends prisoners rather than friends. If they were my friends, they had to be my friends. You couldn't have other friends. And especially my best friend, Amy, that poor thing, she was not allowed to have any other best friend. Because I felt that I always compared myself to everybody. And that comparison, it's still something that I work on today. And so I held people captive. I felt like I wasn't good enough, and that was part of why I was holding them captive, because if they were friends with other people, they would like them more and no longer like me, because I just did not feel like I was good enough. So, that's how I ran for a while, and I was introduced to alcohol at a young age. I had older brothers and sisters, 10 years older, so they were in the party scene. Mom and Dad would go out of town, and they would throw a party at the house. The neighbors were around the same age as them, so you just go out on the street. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the city, so it was common to see people on the corner having a drink or smoking some pot. And I remember thinking how cool my brothers and sisters were and how I wanted to be like them. And so my first drink would have been when Mom and Dad were out of town. And I believe it was either an Iron City or Budweiser, but it doesn't matter. They gave it to me and my girlfriend Amy, my best friend that couldn't have any other friends. And I remember drinking it, and I didn't really think much of it, but I wanted more because of what was going around me. The party, it looked enticing. They were all having fun. I felt grown up. I can't remember if that really was good or not. Shortly after that, I found a joint on the street, and I ran upstairs to my older sister, and I asked her to show me how to smoke it, which she did in the sub-basement. And I remember not caring for it, and my other girlfriend just loved it. But what I liked, though, was the scene that was around it. Everyone looked like they were having a good time. Got into probably early middle school. I remember, though, I was just such a rebellious child. I started cutting in elementary school. I was in elementary school, cutting school. I was, 4th, 5th grade, and I didn't want to be there. I was falling behind in school at that age already, maybe a mild learning disability, I don't know. So my way out was to exit out and not have to deal with feeling like I was not intelligent enough to be there. So that would be me acting out. And they would reach out to my parents. And I remember one time my dad had to take take out of work to take me to elementary school because they wanted to know where my father was and all this. My mom would always take me. And Lord, I got beat when I got home for that. We had to go, in no way, we were beat as a child with the white belt, it was called. And we would always have to go retrieve that white belt that had holes and studs on it. And I don't see that as abuse at all from my parents. I had very loving parents. I had disciplinary parents, but that just never worked on me. So start cutting school, and then I just start running with a crowd that was drinking and drugging, and that was the end for me. So by the time I got to middle school, I was probably drinking any time that I could. Anytime that I could get my hands on alcohol. And I had this one friend that she had a bunch of aunts and uncles. And they didn't care. They would buy us alcohol. I found out that my favorite was pure grain mixed with Snyder's iced tea. And the pure grain, I think, was 190 proof. And that I fell in love with. First time I drank it, I got arrested. We was all just hanging out, and cops came by, and I opened up my mouth, and I started calling them pigs, and he asked me when I was born. I said 1776, and he drove me right by my house and down to the station and put me behind bars. And my mom had to come get me, and I didn't think much about it. I really didn't think much about it. I thought, can't wait to do that again. That's what I thought. And I don't remember if I was sick the next day or not. I don't remember the disappointment in my parents' eyes. I didn't care. I grew up not caring like if I hurt people. That was just the way I ran. My selfishness and self-centeredness was always there. I can't remember a time when it wasn't there. Because it was always about me. It was always about Roxanna and what Roxanna could get and when Roxanna wanted it and how I was going to get it. So I continued to drink. I got an older boyfriend, and he was 21, so he could buy alcohol, and that was the whole point of getting an older boyfriend. And I was 14 and started dating him. And that's what I did. I drank. I would run away from home, not come home for days. Mom would call my best friend, and then back then we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, probably beepers, but I didn't have one. So Mom had no way of getting a hold of me or tracking me down, and so she would call a friend, and eventually I'd come home. At the age of 13, in the midst of drinking, I decided that I didn't want to live anymore. And I tried to commit suicide by taking a bunch of pills. And my parents took me to the hospital, and then I ended up in a 30-day, psychiatric place for small children or teenagers. And that was a vacation to me. I got to learn new tricks on what to do outside, hear different stories that was worse than mine. And I got to lay around and play volleyball, and there was, I felt no consequence. But when I got out of there, they said that I needed to go to a rehab. And I didn't like that at all. So my parents checked me into a rehab, but for some reason I could sign out of that. I don't know why, but I could. So I was there for 3 days, and I signed out. And I remember being there thinking, I don't have an issue. You guys all have the issue. Not once did I think that here I am, 13 years old, already in a rehab, spent 30 days in a psych ward. I might have an issue here. I do remember one guy in there, and he was probably 25, And he was sitting at the table, and he was probably writing his 4-step. And we were just joking around and having a good time. And I remember him looking at us, shaking his head, and said, "This is not a joke. You know, this is like the second, third time I'm back in here, and this is about my life." And that always stayed with me, how sincere he was, how scared he was, how this was so important to him to get sober. And I didn't understand what getting sober meant at that time, because I really didn't think I had a problem. I was just having fun, being rebellious. So I got out of there, and nothing changed. Nothing changed. Dropped out of school, got a job. I was working at 14. At 15, at that job, I got my hand stuck in a pasta machine, and I remember being in the hospital, and they had me on a morphine drip. That was awesome. I could press the button every 3 minutes. And I remember there was a lady in there, an older lady, and shared the room with me, and I had no respect for her whatsoever. I threw a party up in that place. Like, my friends were coming to visit me. They had alcohol on them. And I had no respect for the sick woman that was next to me. And my mom told me in there that we were moving to Tucson, Arizona. My parents were retiring. And so I was 15. I was moving to Tucson, Arizona. And I was devastated. My arm was all jacked up. And so off to Tucson, Arizona we went. And that was a blessing, because it slowed me down. We got to Tucson, Arizona. I didn't have any friends. So I start just swimming a lot, doing some correspondence school. Got a job. With the job came the friends that I would drink with. And I went back to drinking. Moved out of my parents' house at 17, and with a boyfriend who also liked to drink, and that's what we did. We drank on weekends. And at that time, I think it was mainly weekend parties. And I was working in retail, and I was sick of the hours, because the hours would require me to work on the weekends and work on the holidays. And my weekends were for partying. So I said, I need to go to school so I can find a job that I'm off on the weekends. And that was my pure motivation, was go back to school so I can party on the weekends. And so I did. I got my GED and went back to school and got into dentistry, and I got out of there, and life was life. Everything that I did revolved around alcohol. I didn't go over to my parents without alcohol. I didn't go to a party, like a baby shower, without alcohol. I didn't go anywhere without it. And I still remained that person that put on a show for you. I would become who you needed me to be. But I always felt not good enough, that I didn't fit in. There was always something in my head saying, Roxanne, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you need to be more. And that's just the way that it was always that way. It was just always that way. And so I continued to. I remember talking to people and jokingly saying that I'm a functioning alcoholic, and was kind of proud of that, because I could hold down my job. It didn't interfere. Of course, I already had a DWI by then, but that didn't matter. And served a night in jail. But I was functioning. I got up every day and I worked hard. And I went to work hung over, but I showed up because it was inflicted pain. So you have to show up when it's inflicted pain. And would be thrown up in a bathroom. And so about 23, it started becoming more, and I was starting to drink during the week. And I had tried everything, beer, wine, but vodka was my drink. And I would start just drinking vodka all the time, because I could not get drunk enough first of all, beer would fill me up. And I would literally have to puke it up so I could drink more, because I was too full to ingest more, and I wasn't drunk yet. Wine, it would get me there, but it took too long, so it was vodka. And I started drinking, and I remember one day I did the hair of the dog, and that hair of the dog was wonderful on weekends. Well, all of a sudden, that hair of the dog had to move into my weekdays. And I remember taking that drink right before work. I was shaking, throwing up, and I took a few shots, and I went into work, and it worked marvelously. I found the cure. I just drink before I go to work, and I don't have to shake. Not should I get help or should I stop drinking, because that was not an option. That was like not even a thought. Like my boyfriend, he needed to quit drinking. He was drinking a little too much, but not me. And that day, that's whenever, if there's an invisible line, that's where I really crossed it, where there was no turning back. From that day on, I drank around the clock. I would start in the morning when I woke up in my coffee. I lived in Arizona at that time, and Arizona sells hard alcohol at like your 7-Elevens, your Circle K's, your gas stations. So I could get it at 6 in the morning. So I would wake up, take a shot, go to work, and I'm working in dentistry. So I'm working in people's mouths, and I'm buzzed all through the day. I'd keep my bottle in the car, and I would go out in the middle of the day and take a few shots, come back in, out at lunch, and it escalated like that. And soon I was bringing it in my water bottle into my locker and would be drinking all day at work. People had called me out at work a few times because they would see me shaking in the morning and sweating because the alcohol hadn't kicked in yet. And I'd be like, oh, I drank too much coffee. I remember this one girl, though. She would look at me. She knew what was going on. And it was the way that I lived. It was the only way that I knew how to live. I don't know why I didn't think at that time to go get help, but it just didn't seem possible. I would drive my mom around drunk. I would drive everyone around drunk. I stayed drunk 2 fists a day, every day. And I remember going, I was so sick at work one time, and they're like, Roxanne, you need to go to the doctor. So I went over, we had just a physician right there in the complex, and I went over there, and he took some blood and called back up. He says, you need to get to the emergency room. You know, your white blood count cells are bad. And so I went, and they're like, you have alcohol poisoning, and your pancreas is shutting down. So I stayed in the hospital for a few days. I got my pancreas under control. They told me not to drink and what to eat. That lasted maybe a week. And the boyfriend was the problem, so I left the boyfriend. And I went back to work, and I started living with my parents and was drinking around the clock again. I was at work one time. By this time, I had learned, see, back then you could call in narcotics. And so I was calling in a narcotic every once in a while. And one day, because I was buzzed up, I called in a prescription. This is Roxanna calling in a prescription for Roxanna. Well, they didn't go over too well. So they called the doctor, and the next day I come in, and he was kind enough to pull me aside and ask me told me that this is what he found out, and that he thinks I need to go to rehab. And if I went to rehab, he would support that, and I could have my job back after 3 months of sobriety. So that's what I did. I went home, cried, called the rehab places, got in the rehab. And rehab, I don't know, it was like another vacation. When I look back at it, there was no soul searching. There was no step one. I wasn't giving up everything. I was not going to give up my lifestyle. I was not going to give up my alcohol. But I pretended, and there was a part of me that did want to. There was that small part that wanted a better life. But rehab was kind of like a dating place. And it was a place that got to hear other people's stories, and attention was focused on me and what's the matter with Roxanna, and the family would come in and I would get all this attention, and I didn't look much at myself then. And I remember filling out they had this little test that when I went in, you took. It was a multiple choice. And when I left there, I took that test again, and they told me, they said, you're still thinking like an alcoholic. And 3 months later, of course, I got my job back. 3 months later, though, I was drunk. Now, I was going to IOP, and I met a guy. And I thought it was a grand idea to start dating somebody in the program. And so we started dating. He relapsed. I relapsed right behind. And I ran with that guy for about 1.5 years. And he was fast cars, fast money, and fast drugs. And that opened up a whole nother nightmare for me that I didn't even know existed out there. It was a whole different world for me. But during all of that, it was my alcohol that I always wanted. It was the bottle that I had to have. He could do his drugs. I would do so much of his drugs because I was so mad that he was spending so much money a day that I was making sure I was getting my part. But it was the alcohol that I wanted. It was the alcohol. So that ran to several, I don't even know how many detoxes, in and out, deathly sick, homeless, living in a motel, out of my car, Skid Row, I guess they call that. That's where I was. So I was getting to the point, I was just delirious. I was always seeing things. There was always bugs crawling on the wall. I hardly weighed anything because all I did was drink. That's all I wanted was alcohol. And that life got really crazy, really quick. And one day I had just had enough. Now, I had a head full of AA, so I knew that there was a solution. And I knew that people stayed sober in this program. And I was floating in and out. And when I was the several times that I was in detox, I was starting to get some desire to really want a different life. And my life was so unmanageable and so insane. And by that time, my mom had written me off to the effect that she was just waiting for the call, or to find me dead, or the police to come to her door. She welcomed me in her house to feed me dinner, but I was not allowed to stay. Now, my parents raised us that we never borrow money, so I never borrowed any money from my parents. We always had to be self-sufficient. So it wasn't a money thing, and I never stole from them, but it was, there's nothing I can do for you anymore. There's nothing I can do for you. And she said that was the hardest thing she ever did in her life. My mom used to come over to my place, and she'd find me in my bed with puke on me and smelling like urine and not showered in days and shaken. And that's the way that she would find me every time she'd come over. And that was normal to me. A shower was way too difficult. I could not stand in the shower. The shower hurt my skin. It was just take a drink and pass out. That's what my life turned into. Take a drink so I can pass out because I can't face this anymore. So in 2006, I went to rehab in 2004. 2006, I got enough guts and I was so tired of running. I called my parents, and my sister had invited me to North Carolina, her and her long-term boyfriend, because they thought they could help me get sober. And so I called my parents one night and I said, I'm done. I want to go to North Carolina. And I was on the plane the next day. And here I come, North Carolina. in June of 2006, thinking that I'm going to get sober. What I did was I came and really destroyed my sister's life, turned it upside down. Came drunk, went to AA in the Cornelius Lake Norman area in Charlotte, and stayed that way for about 6 months. And in and out of AA, there's wonderful group up there, and those people kept telling me to come back. I'd come back. They take me to detox. They would stock my refrigerator. Keep coming back, Roxanne. Keep coming back. And I remember one guy. He looked at me one day and he said, "Kid, when are you gonna get it?" He was an old timer. And "Kid, when are you gonna get it?" And that went right through me. So another detox in December. I was there during Christmas. And then New Year's Eve of 2006, I went to a meeting. And at that meeting, I read How It Works. And for the first time, How It Works rang true to me. I finally heard what it said. And that moment was a spiritual awakening. And I went home and I called my sponsor at that time and I started getting sober. I used to tell her, I said, I don't know how to work this first step. There's got to be some paperwork to do on it. I don't know. I just can't get it. I just can't get it. What it was that I couldn't get was that I wasn't done. I wasn't willing to go to any lengths. I wasn't willing to suffer through life without alcohol. I wasn't willing to go through the desires and get on my knees or call somebody and do whatever it took not to drink. But that night, something changed. So I start doing the program. I worked with my sponsor. She slowly took me by the hand and taught me how to live without a bottle in my mouth. Golly, she loved me. She loved me till I could love myself. She walked me through the steps. She sat and listened to a 7-hour fifth step. She welcomed me in her home. She gave me rides. I didn't have a car because I had a DUI when I came in. And I would walk to meetings. I would take a bus to meetings. I would do whatever it took to get to those meetings. And a lot of times I would take a bus and then maybe be able to find a ride home. I remember walking a few miles to them. That's what I had to do daily. And I went through those steps and I made amends. I buried, I started to get to know who Roxanna was, which I had never known who that was. And I started liking who she was. I start doing things for other people, start thinking about other people. I grew up in a religious home, and golly, I love my mama so much. And she is a witness that there is a higher power, that there's a God out there. Through her, even though I didn't believe as a child, I watched her, and I watched her in her religion, and I watched her remain calm in every situation. I watched her have peace. And so I knew there was God through her. So when I came in, I didn't have a relationship. I knew that there was one, but I didn't have a relationship. The second, third step, and staying sober each day and starting to help other people and get outside of myself. And then that desire was removed from me. I knew that there was a God. I got to bury my father at 3 years sober and give his eulogy. I got to make amends to my father. I met a wonderful guy outside of the program that I married and have a marriage beyond my belief today, a marriage that we are partners in, that we communicate that I'm not always seeking for what he can do for me, that I'm actually thinking about what I can do for him. But he also became a little bit of my God. So we got married when I was about 6 years sober, met at 3. And we moved, and I moved away from my home group. And my sponsor had moved to Florida. And when I moved, I tried to get another home group, but I didn't participate. I didn't show up. Sponsored very little. And slowly but surely, I was outside of AA. And I started becoming miserable. So I would say I was outside of AA around 7 years. Still had lots of friends that I was communicating with, meeting with, but I wasn't doing the works. I wasn't showing up. Wasn't going to meetings. Was not sponsoring. Wasn't reading the big book. And I thought at that time, and this is for me, I thought at that time I was very involved in the church. I was getting up and reading every morning. Reading my Bible, but also reading AA literature. I thought I was good. I was spiritually fit, and that's all that mattered. So I was going to be okay. I didn't have to go on these AA meetings because these AA meetings took way too much time up. And I had to free myself up for my husband and my life with my husband. And so that's what I did. That's what I did. And I became crazy again, and I didn't know it. The insanity sat back in my head. I became selfish. It became about me, and the pain became greater and greater and greater until I needed a release. And so that release started with the Xanax because I was having high anxiety, so I needed to take a Xanax. And it ended with a drink. And that drink took me out for almost 4 years. And it was hard coming back in here. I remember picking up my 10-year chip and then not drinking long after that. And knowing when I picked up that chip that I probably shouldn't be picking up that chip because I wasn't part of the program anymore. And that drink came and destruction came. And when I started drinking, all of a sudden I could drink like once a month, twice a month. I never drank like that in my life. So I thought I had control. I got this. Because I never had control like this. So husband would go out of town and I would drink. That didn't last too long. It took over. And I was coming in and out. And thank God you told me to keep coming back. So in that relapse, thank God I didn't lose my husband. I lost myself. I lost some time. But I gained knowledge, again, of how this disease is. That it doesn't matter how much time I have 24 hours. I have today, and what am I going to do today to stay sober? Am I going to reach out to somebody? Am I going to go to a meeting? Am I going to pray? Am I going to meditate? What am I going to do today to stay sober? And I have to ask myself that every morning. And whenever I started working with my newest sponsor, she would have me text her every morning what I was going to do to stay sober. And that has stayed with me. Because that's a question. And there are some days where I say, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to watch TV. And that's okay, but I don't feel as good the next day. So the last year, golly, I owe to you guys. Nobody else wants to work with a drunk like me that comes in and tears things up and becomes so selfish and self-centered. But you guys do. You guys teach me and pick me back up how to work these steps again. Now, I got to be honest with these steps. I can't come in here and half-assed, I did it. I did it this time around and lied through it, and it didn't work. You know, another chip came. There's a lot of ego that I have to swallow in this pride. And I still check my ego daily today. And today I like it. I like it whenever I see that, oh, Roxanne, your ego's really shining through there. I sponsor. I attend AA meetings. I read the big book. I pray each morning. I try to give back what has been given to me. And I try to do that without judgment. Some of us don't get this. Some of us are not, whatever it is, don't get this miracle in their life. This miracle of being free. Oh my, freedom. If I could swear right now, I would swear. Because it is amazing. It is so amazing to have that obsession where you think that you're never going to get out and under, and to be lifted. To care about other people, generally care about other people. To be a part of society. To have self-esteem, self-love. To have true friends. To be able to show up for my family when so many times I was unable to. To not be that embarrassment that I once was. There's so much opportunity here in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I have to give my all, and I have to stay put. I was it Monday? Monday. Golly, I was excited. I was excited because it was a new week, and here comes my meetings again. I was excited to see everyone here. You know, this is my family. I was excited to be a part of. I was excited that for God's grace and mercy that He's given me over and over again so I can show up and maybe help another alcoholic. So that's about my story. We have a lot of chips to give out tonight, so I'm going to leave it early. I love you guys. I love this program. This program is freaking amazing. I hope you all stick around. Thanks for letting me share.